Hello. It's a pleasure to be here with SESC. I am a psychiatrist of Sorocaba, and I would like to ask you about the biological factors, the hormonal influences that you think that has to do possible with the gender or the expression of gender. And because there are some researchers in Denmark that they asked about the work of men and work of women, and they wanted to prove that a woman has some natural skills and the man others. And what do you think about this kind of thinking, including the biological factors?
I think it's well established that there are hormonal differences, chromosomal differences, physiological differences that for the most part hold between men and women, although there are also enormous variations, especially in terms of chromosomes and in terms of hormonal levels. So it's important to see that although we work with a binary idea of the sexes, both hormonal and endocrinological and genetic research has found an interesting degree of overlap and prefers to, for the most part, to think about a continuum rather than a dyad. But perhaps the most important answer to your question has to do with how we understand these physiological or biological factors. Are they causal? Are they deterministic? In other words, if we have a certain hormone, does that imply necessarily that we will look a certain way, feel a certain way, act a certain way, or have a certain self-understanding? We can accept that there are hormones and that sometimes there are hormonal differences that are significant without accepting the idea that these causally determine our social function, our self-understanding, or our sexuality, or even our gender presentation. Hormones are interactive. Genes are interactive. Genes get activated under certain environmental conditions, and there are a number of possible ways for them to express themselves. So what becomes realized depends in part on the life that's being lived, where and how. Even neurons, if we found neurological differences between the sexes, neurons also interact with environment. But if we reject the interactive approach and take an approach of causal determinism, then we're back to this very, very conservative and scientifically not very smart view, right? It's a scientifically weak view, right? That once we have these factors identified, we can then predict gender, sexuality, self-understanding, interpretation, self-interpretation. I think we can't allow that particular model to triumph.
Hello, Professor Butler. My name is Marina. I'm writing for Academica magazine. I have a question to you about feminism, and I was wondering if you could see some specific peculiarities in the Latin American feminist movement that could help build these alliances of precarities that can help the queer movement in general within this queer movement of a lot of gender identities, but specifically the precarities that political choices that the feminists in Latin America have to deal with every day. Thank you.
Well, let me say first that let's remember that the term gender is part of feminism and was part of feminism way before it became associated with queer theory. And for me, feminism and queer studies are interwoven like this. There is no way to disarticulate the one from the other. If you are against sexism, you must also be against homophobia. If you are against homophobia, you have to be against transphobia. I think the trans community has challenged feminism to open up the category of woman, or to open up the category of man, to understand that those who are not born into that gender assignment can nevertheless enter that assignment at some point in life. So to expand women to include trans women, to expand men to include trans men. This is very important. But in my view, this is continuous with feminism. And I do see that although there are some tensions in Latin America between feminism and trans, there are also very often very strong alliances. So we need to look at those alliances and perhaps learn from those. I am aware, for instance, in the Latin American feminist movement, of some of the material on femicide. And it's interesting, it's important. I think we have to, perhaps with Berenice Bento, think about violence against women and violence against trans people together. We should be thinking, we should have a complex analysis that allows us to think both sorts of violence, because they are forms of violence that seek to control gender, or to punish, or to terrorize on the basis of gender and sexuality. So I think that's very important. I also think that there are degrees of illiteracy that women suffer, and degrees of poverty that women suffer throughout Latin America, that make them into a substantial part of the precariat of those who suffer precarity, right? If we ask who is more likely to suffer precarity, dispossession, bad health, lack of shelter, lack of education, lack of economic prospects, women will always be there as the largest majority. And I think even globally, we might say, one reason feminism remains so important is that women are disproportionately subject to violence, to illiteracy, and to poverty. That's true in Latin America. It's true throughout the globe. We can talk about it in terms of the global South, but I think we can also talk about it on the peripheries of Europe and in different parts of the world. Maybe that's enough for now. I could go on and on, so I will quiet.
Bom, agora são 3 horas e normalmente ela precisa se preparar para a apresentação que começa dentro de 1 hora. Eu vou passar só mais uma questão aqui e aí eu pergunto a ela para ela estar de espírito, mas provavelmente ela vai ter que descansar um pouquinho, tá bom? Mas eu vou perguntar, vou caçar aqui e vou verificar.
Hi Judith, my name is Inês Castilho. I'm from a digital magazine called Outras Palavras, Other Words.
Okay, Outras Palavras.
Yes. My question is about this moment we are living in the world with the crisis of migration. More precarious than that is difficult to think in the world, right? And I want to know, how do you see this moment with such a crisis?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's a moment in which we are all watching the wealthier nations of the world to see whether they will assume humanitarian and global responsibility for populations who are, because of war or dispossession or destitution, forced to leave their homes and countries. And for me, I think it brings out the fact of global interdependency. A nation may think, oh, we can't take refugees, but if the refugees wash up on your shore, alive or dead, you are already implicated in the lives of others. So it is a moment, I think, a really important moment for us to elaborate an idea of global obligation, especially on the part of the wealthier countries of the world. What provisions will they make? How will they welcome new populations? How will they open their doors? How will they relocate them and resettle them and give them a chance to live a livable life within that nation? Of course, there's also the risk of intense xenophobia. We saw that in Germany. We've also seen Germany open its doors in a way that is commendable, surprised me. But it's a moment of change, right? Do the first world nations with all their wealth close their door and protect their racial unity and their national unity, or do they open, understanding themselves to be part of a global community?
Are you optimistic?
No. I'm not optimistic right now, but we're also in a moment of upheaval, so we have to watch carefully to see what happens. I love being surprised. Germany surprised me. Maybe I will be surprised again. Let's hope I am surprised.
Yeah.
Obrigado.
There are 2 more people.
Okay, we do that. It's 3. Okay, we do it very quickly.
Very quickly.
Okay.
So the last 2 questions,
it's the
bem
two last.
rápido, gente, para
Bem
descansar.
rápido, tá
Ah,
bom?
tranquilo.
I have to be quick. JB, quick.
Hi, my name is Thais. I'm from Feminist Bloggers, an independent blog in Brazil. And
Mas minha
I'm
conclusão,
being very
não,
quick.
não,
How do you see the concept of cisgender that a lot of trans feminists are discussing right now in Brazil?
Mhm. Great. Someone asked me this question in Salvador, but I misunderstood the question. I thought they asked me about transgender.
I was there.
I'm sorry, but now I get to answer it. Look, cisgender is an important concept because it describes a group of people who are at peace with their own gender assignment or who conform to the gender assignment. I was called a girl, I became a girl, I like being a girl, I'm a girl. Good. That's one possibility in life. The reason why cisgender is important is that it doesn't say that is normal, right? It doesn't say it's normal. It says it's one possibility of living a gender in the world. Right, you can live your gender, you can live in accord with your gender assignment, and you can be at peace with that, and you can present in the world in accord with it, and that's okay. That's good, but it is only one possibility among others. It should not be the norm. In other words, it should not be that to which we all aspire. It's not the normal. It's simply one modality among others. The only worry I have about cisgender is that sometimes when I hear people talk about it, it reproduces a kind of a new binary. Either you're cisgender or you're trans. It's like, there are a bunch of us in the middle who are gender queer, right? Gender queer is very important for people who are not at peace with their gender assignment, who are mistaken as men. If you are a woman, you're mistaken as a man, or you're treated as monstrous, or nobody knows what you are. They don't like not knowing what you are. You can be discriminated against. You can be the object of violence, and for genderqueer people, they are not cisgender. but neither are they trans. So let us remember that it's a very complex continuum. I think every time we see a rigid binary starting to reemerge, we need to remember the continuum.
Judith, Fabrício from Entrevistas. You have sort of a celebrity status on the gender studies, and I was
What
wondering,
kind of studies?
the celebrity studies.
Celebrity.
Yeah.
Celebrity.
I was wondering if you feel, or if it affects the way you think now, if people actually dare you or are afraid of you, that persona. How do you feel about that? If it's positive or not?
It leaves me feeling very alone. No, it's okay. I mean, I'm embraced, I'm hated, I'm elevated, I'm criticized, but it doesn't have to do with this person that I am. I understand it, I carry it, I assume responsibility for it. I see that it does some good things in the world, and I'm glad. But makes me tired, makes me lonely. That's the truth. I shouldn't be so truthful, right?
I was thinking about it.
No, I mean, there are people who get very involved in their celebrity, like, you know, am I on the front of the page, am I not? Like, how big am I, who's reading me, am I more important than this one, how many copies did I sell? You know, I don't want to live like that. It would be bad for my health, it would be bad for the people who I care about. You know, so on the one hand, I see it that it's helpful for some people, and I'm glad. So I inhabit it to that degree, but I also have an ironic distance from it, because that can come, it can go. You know, if you get terribly excited about being a celebrity that everyone loves, then you will be very devastated when you are the devil, right? When you have a diabolical ideology and you are the devil. Like, you're the devil, I'm something else. Right? And when they hate you, and you know, then you go down with them, so it's manic, right?
Just to make a comment about that, to be clear, you know, because there are things, tem coisas circulando na internet chamando a Judith de rainha da ideologia de gênero e eu de demônio. É por isso.
And they even got my gender wrong. They got my gender wrong.
Yes. I could be the queen.
Okay, anyway, thank you.
Obrigado, Miss Butler. Obrigado a vocês pela presença. Espero que a Ana se preparar para a palestra que ela vai proferir em seguida. Agradecemos a presença de todos. Obrigado pela participação.
Okay.